This presentation will be dedicated to teaching you about programming and programming languages. We'll begin by describing what a program language is and the history of programming languages. After that, we'll continue with more information about programming languages. Afterward, we'll compare programming languages and focus in on C and C++, which are the two languages we'll learn in this course. So what exactly is a programming language? Programming language is an artificial language, meaning that we created it. The language is described to express computations and tasks that can be performed by a computer. We need these languages so that we can talk to computers, so that they can do the jobs that we want them to do. And now for a little history about programming languages. The concept of a programming language extends before 1940. Of course, languages back then are much different from the languages that we know now. One question that comes up is how many programming languages are there? And as you can see from this graph, which shows interconnections between related languages, there are a lot of programming languages. The languages that we'll see in this course, C and C++, are highlighted in this figure in the middle of the slide. Another nice graph that shows the relationship between languages can be found at the link provided. It shows the history of programming languages beginning from 1954. And if you look farther down in that poster, you'll see where C and C++ began. 1978 for C, and 1983 was the first appearance for C++. Now you may be wondering, if there's so many programming languages, which one should I be studying? Or, in other words, what languages are hot and in demand by industry? In this graph, you'll see the percentage of matching jobs to a particular programming language. While Java is in first place, C++ is in second. Java and C++ share many commonalities. Why don't we study Java in this course? Because the following course, ENCM 369, takes you one step closer to computer hardware, while Java goes one step farther from it. Learning C++ and C allows you to better understand how computers operate. Here's another example of the popularity of different programming languages. This is taken from the TIO Programming Community Index in August 2012. The results come from the fraction of hits for a particular language on their search engine. You'll notice that in this graph, C actually has the highest fraction of total hits, while Java is in second place, and C++ comes in fourth place. Actually, Java, C, and C++ all share many commonalities. But what types of programming languages are there? Let's look at how a program controls a computer. At the highest level, we have high-level languages like C and C++. Those languages get turned into assembly, which is a low-level language that represents specific instructions that a computer processor supports. Those assembly language commands are turned into machine language, which are represented as a series of ones and zeros in the computer. The operating system works in between the machine language and the computer hardware. Recently, even higher level languages than C and C++ have begun to become popular. An example of this is MATLAB Simulink and even LEGO Mindstorms, which you may have seen in your first year of engineering. App Inventor is one example of a visual programming language. It's used to create apps for Android phones. This is an image of how you program using App Inventor. You drag and drop and make connections between different components using a visual interface. Some of you may have programmed using Scratch in first year ENGE 233. This is a very similar idea to that. Another example of visual programming is MATLAB Simulink. In future courses, you'll almost certainly use Simulink. It's a very powerful tool which can simulate many different situations, and in this example, it's simulating the dynamics of a vehicle. So to help us understand what a visual programming language is, here's a definition on Wikipedia. Visual programming language is one that allows users to create programs by manipulating program elements graphically rather than textually. Now let's take a look at how different programming languages look by analyzing their syntax. So which one of these have you seen in the past? C++ was the language used in ENGE 233, so it should look very familiar. However, C is also very similar. C# is a common language in industry which is developed by Microsoft and supports the .NET framework. Objective-C is used for iOS apps and looks very similar to C. And let's look at a few more examples of programming languages. Here's MATLAB, which is a powerful high-level language used for analyzing mathematical equations. Java is similar to C++ and even closer to C#. Visual Basic, Perl, Python, and PHP are all other examples of programming languages. With the exception of the MATLAB example, all of these programs would perform the same basic function of displaying Hello World. You may have heard of a small website named YouTube. Most of the development for YouTube is written using the Python language. This is proudly stated on the Python website. Another popular website, Facebook, uses PHP for the front end. Front end is used to describe what the user sees. With so many different programming languages, it's important to compare and contrast different languages so that we can use the most efficient language for the job that we're doing. I won't go into much detail comparing languages right now. Throughout the course, you'll be able to compare C and C++ as two example languages. When comparing languages, there's many different metrics that can be used. One important metric is performance. Some languages lead to faster programs than others. So even writing the same program in two different languages, one may perform faster than the other. C and C++ are well known for their high performance. Now I'll give a short overview of C and C++ and look at some real code systems developed using C and C++. The C language was developed by Dennis Ritchie at Bell Labs during the years of 1969 and 1973. C influenced many popular languages that exist today and is one of the most widely used programming languages of all time. Many operating systems are written in C. C++ was again developed at Bell Labs in 1979. Originally it was named C with glasses, which gives you an idea of the difference between C and C++. C++ is a very popular language again, and has also strongly influenced many programming languages. You might be interested to know that many games have been developed using C and C++. As I mentioned before, C++ is a high-performance language. This is because it directly compiles into machine code. This makes it a very popular choice for games where performance is critical. At the bottom of the slide, we see a typical structure for a game. In case you're interested, Wikipedia hosts a list of open source video games. Open source means that all of the code is available for you to use freely. Here is one example of an open source game developed in C and C++. It's called 0AD. It's a real-time strategy game focusing on early civilizations. Here's a screenshot of some of the code written in C++ for 0AD. As an example for mobile devices, such as an iPhone, let's consider the Z-Bar barcode reader. Some of you may even have this installed on your iPhone. All of the code for Z-Bar is located on SourceForge. SourceForge is a popular place to store open source code. The language used in this case is Objective-C, which is proprietary to Apple. Although the .m files are something very similar to what you would see in C++. Here is an example of some of the Z-Bar Objective-C code. Now, which programming language will we learn, or should we learn? We'll follow many other universities by teaching C and C++. By learning these languages, you'll develop a strong foundation in programming, and you'll be able to easily learn other languages based on what you learn here. In this presentation, I covered what programming languages are, a little bit about the history of languages, and how many languages there are today. You also saw which languages are hot and in demand by industry. I also gave some reasons why C and C++ are used for this course.